sometimes the best gets are the ones that you already have, right? We saw that with Florida. We saw that with Auburn. We saw that with Houston. And this season, we're seeing that with UConn, Goodman. And I know you're going to buck, and I know you're going to be like, oh, you're a homer. Oh, this guy loves Dan Hurley too much, or whatever it is. But I will say this. I think that getting Alex Karaban back, having him not go pro, getting Terrace Reed to avoid putting his name in the portal, getting Solo Ball to come back to school, and going out and getting the two pieces that you needed. I don't know how you could have had, if you were UConn, how you could have had a better basically a better spring than they've had so far. What does Karaban's return mean for them? And is this a team that is back in your mind in the conversation of being a real Final Four contender?
I mean, I wouldn't put him number one in the country preseason, as Dan Hurley tried to get us to do a year ago. I think now we've got more realistic expectations, right? Which is, hey, they're not number one, but they're somewhere in that probably, maybe 5 to 15 range. And I know that's a big gap, but what you're going to do is you're looking at the overall roster, and Alex Karaban coming back is huge. From a culture standpoint, from a all about winning standpoint, he doesn't care about his numbers. Obviously, he had a down year for him last year. The key is going to be Silas Demery. Is he going to be a star? Is he going to be their best player? If he is, now again, Liam McNeely was their best player, and that didn't translate. He was hurt a bunch, but that didn't translate to them being a national title contender. They need Solo Ball to take the next step. They need Terrace Reed to be more consistent. They need Malachi Smith to be a good, solid, which I love that pickup as your backup point guard. I friggin' love that pickup. And they're going to need one, Jalen Stewart's going to have to take a jump, right? Or Jaden Ross. Like one of those guys is going to have to take, probably Stewart, is going to have to take a jump here. And maybe Mullins comes in and makes a huge impact as a freshman. I'm never going to kind of question Dan Hurley and what he can do. I just think last year was one of those, I don't want to say humbling moments, but like one of those moments where hopefully Dan Hurley looks in the mirror this year and says, all right, you know what? I'm not going to say a bunch of stuff to put a target in our back. I'm going to go the other way. I'm going to undersell and over-deliver this year. But I think he came in last year just thinking like, all right, again, we've won the 2 national titles. I'm going to puff out my chest and say we should be the number one team in the country, when there was no reason anybody should have had them ranked number one, other than the fact that they were coached by Dan Hurley, and previous teams with a bunch of different players had won the previous 2 national titles.
Yeah, I remember we had this conversation around this time last year about UConn, where we kind of said, look, this is a team where on paper it does not look like a national title contender. But in 2022, we were not saying that team for the 22-23 season looked like a national title contender on paper. They were unranked in the preseason. They won a title. They were the best team in the country. The year after that, I think we had them as like a top 10, top 12 kind of a team in the preseason. And they ended up being the best team in college basketball, one of the best teams we've seen since the portal era started, and outperformed expectations. So we just kind of said, all right, look, you know what? Just trust the process, trust Dan Hurley, trust that he's going to find a way to get it done, and just bet on what they put together, and that bet on them figuring it out. And it did not work out to the level that we thought it would. This year, I think when you look at the roster, this roster is significantly better, and the way that they've put it together makes a lot more sense for what UConn wants to do. Terrace Reed, I think, is going to have a big year. Solo Ball, I think, will have a Jordan Hawkins-esque season. And Silas Demery, to me, is the perfect point guard to put into the offense that Dan Hurley wants to run. So those are your top 3 guys.
What did they lose? I mean, they lost, obviously, McNeely, who will be a first-round pick, and Samson Johnson, and Diarra, who was great the first, half, 2/3 of the season, then got hurt, wasn't the same when he came back. But they're all replaceable pieces, right? And if everybody, like we said, if Silas comes in and is a dude, and he's more talented than Diarra, we know that. He's a more talented player, and he's a different player.
Well, what it allows more than anything else is it allow the pieces that they brought back, and bringing Demery in allows everybody else to go back to the role that they're supposed to play, right? Hassan Diarra is at his best as the sixth man. Malachi Smith coming in can fill that role that Hassan Diarra left. When you have Silas Demery, Solo Ball, and Terrace Reed out there, you have three guys that are capable of being top of the scouting report guys, which means Alex Karaban can go back to being the guy that stars in his role. I'll say it again. I've said this before. I think he's the best role player in college basketball. If you have him as the fourth or fifth option, that's when you become a national championship caliber team. And I think that that's where they are at right now. I had this conversation the other day, and I'm curious what you think, right? If you were to put together a preseason all Big East team, you probably have Zuby Ejiofor, you probably have Bryce Hopkins, you probably have a couple of other pieces, Thomas Sorber if he comes back. And the way that it shakes out, you probably want two guys from UConn on that preseason all Big East first team. Who would be the two that you would put on there today?
The two players other than Zuby and who?
What the two players from UConn that you would have on a preseason all Big East team. Like, who are the two best players on that roster?
I don't know if they have one. Like that's my one question. Is Silas Demery needs to be that guy. He did it at Georgia. He was a really good player, and it was in the SEC. So, you know, I would say Demery's got to be one of those two. Has to be. For UConn to be a Final Four contender, Silas Demery has to be an all-league player for UConn. And then after that, I don't know. I mean, it's, you know, Solo Ball and Karaban and Terrace Reed. Like, I hope it's Karaban. I'm rooting for him. I mean, he just, you know, we talked about his situation the other day, right? He wanted to go through the process, put his name in for the NBA draft process, and then withdrew it a couple days later because the number was so good at that point to return to UConn. It made financial sense, and his stock is low compared to what it was a year ago. So get your stock back up. You know, have a chance to you know, again, go out the right way at UConn rather than this past year, which I think was a disappointing year for him, both personally and team-wise. So I want Karaban to be that guy. I don't know if they have, like, it's still questions with them who their best player is going to be, or if it's going to be one of those things where they have a bunch of guys that are capable of leading the team in scoring each night.
Yeah, it might be because I'm looking at it through blue-tinted glasses, but I think that they have four guys that are capable of being their best player, or four guys that are capable of being all league, and that's the situation that you want to be in. When it's kind of like pick your poison, whatever matchup allows this player to be the go-to guy on that night is what you go to.